What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another vintage Kenner Star Wars market update for mint on card sales. And there were some foreign variants that also sold. As you can see by the thumbnail, we had a Guerra Stellare Italian Comandante Squadra della Morte. That sounds very evil. He sounds like the bad guy in some Bond movie. Della Morte, Della Morte. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. We also saw a Takara 12 back in here for the Stormtrooper and everything in between. So lots of interesting sales. There were a couple of data points in this batch of items that left me scratching my heads. And one of you guys actually sent it to me, and I already had it on my watch list, admittedly. But I couldn't believe the final sales price. So we'll dig into all those and more as we kind of go through these. And I just want to say thanks to my Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/actionfiguregrader is where you can go to sign up to get 24 hours early access to my videos. Let's talk about some of these early card backs first. First was a 12-back A Darth Vader, graded AFA 75+. And I think that if I ever do decide to get a 12-back, it's probably going to be in that 75 range. I feel like once you start getting into the 80s and 85s, the prices have gotten so stratospheric, and I'm always so terrified that the blister is going to fall off the card or start to yellow that it just makes it cost prohibitive for me at this point, unless we see a massive drop in some of the prices, which I do not expect anytime soon on these 12-backs. But this beautiful 12-back A Darth Vader, again, was graded AFA 75+, sold by Brian's Toys, who we all know. And that one sold for $16.02. So a pretty good value there, I feel like, for a 12-back A Darth Vader. The sub scores were 75, 80, 75. I have no idea why that one got a 75 grade for the figure score. I'm assuming it's some kind of degradation with the cape, or maybe there's some frosting. Looks like maybe some frosting on the helmet there. So again, be careful with these early 12-backs because a lot of the figures, especially if they're white, they obviously start to yellow, and we got another example of that in a little while. Or like this Darth Vader, they start to get frosting. And again, it does look like the head on that one does have some frosting. So that does happen even inside the blister. Next up was a 12-back Obi-Wan Kenobi. This one was a 12-back C, graded AFA 75. And this one went a little bit higher than I expected. It was 70, 85, 85 with a sub-score. So admittedly, it did have two very high 85 sub-scores. But with a card of a 70, you know, again, I don't know which ones are more rare on certain card backs because I just don't follow the 12-back market that closely. But it was unpunched, no price sticker, very nice looking example. It certainly presents every bit of a 75, but that one sold for $16.50, which is $2,079 US dollars. So pretty significant price point there for what could be a fairly harshly graded item. As you can see in the photo, it's got some edge wear there. That's the reason for the card subscore. As you can see there, it's got a little chunk taken out. It looks like Toto decided that this was going to be his new chew toy for a little while there, but luckily it was preserved just in time, and it was taken out of Toto's mouth and sent very quickly to AFA, and it came back with a 70 score for the card. So that was the main culprit there. But again, $2,079 seems a little expensive to me, but again, I don't follow these that closely. Now, this price I thought was actually really good. This was a 12-back B Takara Japanese Stormtrooper with that, you know, import sticker on the front there, and it was an AFA 85. The card got an 85, blister 85, figure 80 score on that one. So beautiful example, and I was really surprised it didn't go higher than this. But I mean, I'm not trying to say this is not a lot of money, folks. This is a lot of money. This is a significant chunk of change. But beautiful crystal clear blister, no price sticker. It was punched, so that maybe held the price down a little bit. But $14.75 for an AFA 85 12-back Takara Stormtrooper seems like a very good buy to me. Next up, speaking of white figures that yellow inside the blister, we've got this Luke Farm Boy, and as you can see, the arms and the white portion of the legs has very heavily discolored. So that's always a risk. You know, even if you got like an AFA 85, does it eventually turn like this over time? Who knows? You know, I would assume that it probably will. So that's the other big reason I don't want to spend big money on some of these early card backs, because you just never know what's going to happen. Now, this one was obviously graded after it turned yellow. The card got a 75, blister 80, figure 60 score, which is about right for an overall 60. Again, it's not an average of the sub scores, folks. you know, if you got a 75, an 80, and a 60, some of you may be saying, well, why didn't get an overall 70? Well, in this case, the 60 score for the figure, because it was so pink, it couldn't get past that. The overall score should be a 60 because the 60 was so quote-unquote bad that, you know, you can't take an average of those subscores. So just keep that in mind when you look at some of these subscores and you're trying to, you know, maybe you're scratching. I get this comment all the time, either privately or I see it on Facebook posts or in the comments for my videos. Why did the average become a 60 when you had two higher subscores? And that's the reason why, is because if one of those subscores is substantially worse, the overall score will be close to that, or if not at that score. And that's the case for this one. But I want to point this out because this is a 12-back C, folks, a 12-back C, and it sold for $9.36. Now, admittedly, it presents, you know, to me, it presents better than a 60, but you have to look at the figure and say, okay, well, it definitely has discolored. But you look at this one that sold for $9.36, and then look at this one. This was a cut card for a Luke Farm Boy on a 20-back. And obviously, it's a cut card. I mean, there's nothing left of the card. Now, the figure is very mint, okay? Now, if you want a mint figure, go buy a mint figure or go buy a loose graded figure for substantially less than $986. Why anyone would pay $986 for this is beyond me. I have no idea. I mean, to me, I'd rather have this one graded AFA 60, and this one sold for less money. And again, I know that the figure is not as nice as the one that's inside this blister, but $986, that is complete insanity to me. I'm just, mine is blown on that one. And I know one of you did mention this to me, and I was going to talk about it. I just hadn't had a chance yet. But $986 for a torn card versus paying, you know, for a 12-back versus a 20-back cut card like that, for less money, I would take that AFA graded 60 all day long versus this one. But again, I'm not judging if you bought this. If this is what you want, then go for it. But to me, $986 is well outside of what I'd pay for this. I was thinking like $500 maybe, but that's a big number. Next up is that Guerra Stellare Harbert Italian Death Squad Commander, and what a beauty. I'm assuming that this is legit and it's not a recard or anything like that. It looks every bit of a legit example. But this one did sell for $616. Here's the back of it with the wonderful Italian language there. I mean, how awesome is that item? Now, it did have some frosting on the helmet, as you can see there. So that probably held the price down some. So again, going back to that Vader, these early card backs, mold can form inside these blisters, and that's what causes you know, that spotting on the helmet. And you know, the Death Squad Commander in general is a very prime culprit of the mold issue. I've seen it on ESB card backs. I've even seen it on Return of the Jedi card backs for the Death Squad Commander. So something about the mixture of the plastics used to make the Death Squad Commander does cause that frosting to form. Now, you can also look around here. There is some issues going on around that blister there, where either the blister is starting to pull off of the card there. Let's see if we can get a good close-up right here. See, if you see right there. Now, I don't know if that's reflections in the sunlight, you know, in the lighting for the photos, but to me, it looks like that blister's starting to pull away a little bit from the card back. So all of those factors held the price down a little bit. You know, the blister score is probably at best going to be a 75, maybe even a 70. The figure score at best is probably going to be a 75. The card back, actually, I think is probably the best subscore for this item. It's probably an 80. So it's probably an overall 70 or 75 because of maybe the card pulling away and because of the frosting. But still, folks, this is a beautiful Harbor Italian mint on card, and $616 I think is a very fair price for that item. Next up was a 21-back Princess Leia Organa. Now, it did have a very, very heavy color-breaking crease going along from the hang tab all the way through the Luke and Leia logo there on the right-hand side of the card back. So that held the price down, but the blister was crystal clear. The weapon was still taped inside the blister, and it, you know, the figure itself looked to be in pretty good shape. Maybe just some very light discoloration, but to me it looks really clean. It looks like it's got some nose rub going on with Leia. So, you know, all of those factors helped keep the price down to $550. And I think that was a good price. I think in a high grade example, ungraded, for a 21 back Leia offer list, you're probably looking at double that price pretty easily. So I think $550 for that is a very fair price. Next up, let's dig into some Empire Strikes Back mint on cards. The first one being a 31 back Princess Leia in her Bespin gown. I thought this was a great price, $396 for that one. Again, you know, it wasn't perfect. It did have a little crease in the lower right-hand corner, but overall, crystal clear blister. Just a very, very nice example. The discoloration to the cape. So this is a running theme that I didn't know I was going to have as I started making this video. But all of these have been really good examples of how figures can degrade inside the blister, still sealed mint on card. And you got to be careful. You really got to zoom in on them. So all of those factors combined to make these prices where they were. But $396, even with the defects, this is what, probably a 70 figure score, an 85 at best blister score, and probably an 80 for the card score. But you're getting a discount there because the figure has started to degrade inside that blister. And $396 is probably about fair. High grade examples without these issues, easily double that price, $600 to $800. So, you know, I think that's a fair deal if you can live with the discoloration going on with the cape. And you don't usually see it with Leia Bespins. You usually see it, as we've talked about in past videos, with the Tusken Raider. He's usually the main culprit for having that discoloration, or the vinyl cape Jawa in those rare instances where he is mint on card. Hakes just sold one that had a discolored cape mint on card for the vinyl cape Jawa. So you're going to be paying a significant discount versus one that is still clean and has not degraded yet. But think about it. If it's happened to this one, it could happen to yours too. And so that's why I usually don't spend a lot of money on mint on cards, because I have zero faith that these 40-plus-year-old toys are going to continue to hold up 10 or 20 years from now, which is right around when I'm going to start selling off my collection, is my guess. I mean, you know, I would think probably 10 years or less. A lot of what you see behind you is probably not going to be here, because I've got two little gremlins that are going to be going to college in about 8 years. And, you know, a lot of that stuff is probably going to get sold. And my hope is that some of the mint on cards in my collection don't degrade like this, but it's something to think about in the back of your head. I'm not saying you got to worry about it all the time, and I'm not saying I go around with a magnifying glass checking out my mint on cards to see if they've degraded since grading or since I bought them. But it's just something to think about before you drop $2,000 on a 12 back, that if it's happened to these, it could happen to yours too. Enough of my soapbox here. Let's dig back in. And this is a good one here. This is one I believe I had in my What to Buy video. And that one time on YouTube, he's got a great Luke Bespin, Luke Farm Boy, Luke Jedi collection. And he did confirm with me that this is the orange-haired variation for the Luke Bespin. He said that they came on these 41 backs, I believe. Yeah, 41 backs. So he said that this was the orange hair. Now there's a brown hair, there's like an olive hair, a mustard hair, but he said that this is definitely the orange haired Luke, because they appeared on those 41 backs. So more information than you needed to know. But the orange haired Luke Bespins are some of the toughest to find. I've got a loose graded example, and probably about as far down the rabbit hole as I'll go. But this mint on card was slightly yellowed. It obviously had some creasing. That one still sold for $530. So just some interesting information there. Here was another 41 back Han Solo Bespin outfit. The card looked to be in great shape, unpunched, but it did have some yellowing to the blister, and that kept the price down. It sold for $440. I think if this still had a clear blister, you can probably add $200 or $300 pretty easily to the final sales price on that one, but that was a pretty nice looking Han Solo Bespin. Next up was a Bespin security guard. This one was a punched example, another 41 back from the same seller, and this one also had some yellowing to the blister. $197 on that one. The Bespin security guards don't get any love, folks. You can get some really good deals on Bespin security guards. We just documented a Canadian example that sold, and then obviously this one sold for under $200. Next up, this one was a nice one and a very good buy in my opinion. I was tempted on it, but I think that the blister stem kind of kept me away from it. But it looked like it had some pretty major crunching going on the stem of this 48 back 21B medical droid, and I just think that it would probably really hurt the grade on it. But it was awfully tempting. It was a beautiful 48 revenge back, And as you guys know, that's one of my favorite card backs. And I love the Revenge sticker. The blue on that really pops with that 2-1B droid inside the blister. And shout out to Todd B and to Brett on FET. They both love the medical droid, and they both really like this figure, and I love it too. But so I stayed away from it because of the blister stem crunch. But $222 was a pretty good buy despite that flaw. The rest of the card and the rest of the blister, the figure, everything looked really clean. It's just that that stem crunch is probably, at best, this is going to be a 70 or 75 at best. But that was a beauty. Next up, this was one I had in my What to Buy video. Now, this is a Revenge of the Jedi proof card for the Red Snaggletooth. It was an AFA 80. And I said that, you know, it was listed for $1,900. And I said in my What to Buy video that if you get it for $1,500 or less, you're probably getting a pretty fair market value. And somebody offered $1,300 for it, and the seller accepted it. So you just never know, despite what something is listed for on eBay, what the seller will really take. And they lowballed them at $1,300, and I thought that was worth every penny of $1,300. AFA 80, Revenge of the Jedi proof card, great buy. If you happen to be watching that What to Buy video and you ended up buying this, congratulations. I think that was a really good purchase. Next up is a transition card, Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker Bespin. Now, this is not the orange-haired Luke that I just showed you on that 41 back. As you can see, it's a slightly different hair color. It's a darker brown color versus the orange hair 41 back that I showed you. Now, this one obviously had quite a bit of damage to it, but it was at auction, and I didn't know what it would go for, but it went higher than I expected, to be honest with you. I was expecting probably maybe $500. It sold for $678. So despite that damage, because it's a popular character and because it's a transition card, only very light yellowing to the blister, it obviously sold for a lot higher than I expected, which is usually the case. I usually am wrong on my guesses. This is another one I thought was a great buy. This was a CAS 75 grade Luke Skywalker in his Hoth battle gear. And this has got the free Neonum offer, and it was a clear blister as well. And it sold at an auction for $305. $305 is a great buy. There was an AFA 80 example on Hakes a few months back that sold for, I believe, $800. Again, I'm digging into my memory bank, so my numbers could be completely conflated. I have no idea. But $305 for this, for a CAS 75 clear blister Luke Skywalker Hoth, that is a great buy. Transition card, too. I would have paid that all day long. And speaking of Luke Hoth, here was another one I believe I had in my What to Buy video. It was an offerless Return of the Jedi unpunched clear blister AFA 80. That's a mouthful. That's what she said, and somebody did pick it up. It sold for $795 on one bid. And I said in my What to Buy video that someone's probably going to bid on this and nobody else is. Or if it does sell, it'll, you know, if somebody else does bid, it might sell around $850. I thought the seller did a perfect job of pricing this, because this is exactly where I would have priced it if this is something that was in my collection. It's nearly impossible. It's a unicorn to find a Luke Skywalker Hoth on a Return of the Jedi that's still clear blister. And it's AFA 80 as well. So I think somebody got a great deal on that. I would have paid that all day long if I was in the market for it. Congratulations if you picked it up. But that was on my What to Buy video. Next up is an AFA 80 Plus Tri-Logo ATST driver. And this was only for sale in the UK. They were not taking any bids from the US. But I went ahead and added it to my watch list just so we could track it. But it sold for £201, which is $253. That is a great buy. I would have paid that as well all day long. I think that was a really good pickup. 80 plus grade AFA ATST driver on the Tri-Logo. It was punched, but that was a beauty and worth every penny of $250 US. That's a steal. Next up was a Princess Leia Organa in a Bouche disguise. This was only slightly yellowed, just a smidge of yellowing on that one. It was unpunched, and I believe the 65 back A is her debut card. Great looking example there, and that one sold in an auction for $237. This one usually very heavily yellows. Now, will this one heavily yellow in 10 years' time? Probably. But at least for now, you get to enjoy this one with only very light yellowing. Now, if this was a clear blister, I bet you could triple this price. I've seen them sell on Facebook for $700, $800, $900 all day long. It's just that hard to find the debut card for Bouche on the US release clear blister. It just never happens anymore. it is a unicorn. So it does happen, but it's very tough to find. But I think given the very light yellowing to that one, $237 was a good buy on that one. Next up, I got a couple of other graded examples. This was a 77 back Reese. Moderate yellowing on that one, graded AFA 80, unpunched card, no price sticker. That one sold for $258. I thought that was a great buy. And the next up was a clear blister Squid Head AFA 85. Squid Head is kind of one of those anomalies on the US release Return of the Jedi cards. You can find him clear blister. It's not that hard to find that one. But it is hard to find it this high of grade. AFA 85, unpunched, no price sticker, clear blister. I was expecting 400-ish. It sold for 455. I think that's a good price. And, you know, again, if you find a clear blister US release Return of the Jedi card in high grade like this, especially an 85 grade, you're gonna pay the piper on it. It's gonna be expensive. And that one, you know, to me, 455 is probably about right. I'd probably pay that. Ungraded, I've seen them sell for $300 plus, so I think 455 is very fair for an AFA 85. Finally, we've got a Luke Skywalker alternate image gunner card, heavily yellowed, but you know the blister had no cracks in it. It was a punched example, no price sticker, and how timeless, how beautiful is that card back? That is a stunner of a card back. You know, me personally, I can live with the yellowing on something like this. This is a tough item to find, and you always got to pay a lot of money for it. And usually, you know, I was expecting this one to actually go for more money, believe it or not. It sold for $14.05 on 20 bids. I was expecting kind of $1,800-ish. I've seen graded examples go for well over $2,000. So I think $14.05 was a great buy. Well within market on that one. So anyway, just some more data points for mint on cards. Lots of different items. A nice wide variety of items. Everything from 12 backs to the later releases with alternate images. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.